Each inhale, breathe in white light. Feel it filling your body with this all white light. And with each inhale of 4 beats to your heart, you can feel your body getting brighter and brighter. And with each exhale, feel any darkness, any constriction, any negativity that you brought in from the day or the week, or things that are carrying in your life. Just breathe them out and release them and let them go. And as you're breathing that out with the exhale, your bodies are getting brighter and brighter, and you're filled with more and more brightness and lightness and light is shining throughout the room. Begin to notice that you can feel this white light and the brightness as it shines, vibrating throughout your body. Feel the white light as you breathe into 4 beats of your heart. And feel your body getting brighter as you exhale any of the negativity and constrictions, any darkness that you've been carrying. Just release it and let it breathe out. And as you continue to focus on your breath, again, always synchronizing it with the beat of your heart, you'll notice that every particle of your body is breathing in this light. Every particle is vibrating from this brightness, from this white light. And feel with every exhale that every particle is releasing all constrictions, anything that's holding inside that particle within your existence. Just breathe it out. And you can feel your body vibrating, shimmering with this white light, expanding well beyond your material body. Feel your inhale bringing in light. And your exhale releasing any negativity, causing you to bring in more white light. In gratitude for the existence that you have to live in this material body and your emotional and mental bodies. Give thanks to the Holy of Holies for giving you this light in this day, in this moment in life, which is what we have to live in. And visualize a large orb around this room and around this building of white light, shimmering white light. This orb is creating a sacred space here for us, a safe space, a space that we can all grow in intention and for what we are looking for out of this night, each individual person, with your intention. We invite in all of the wise ones and the sages, and those that have self-realized, all of those that have walked this path before us. We invite them to join us for these 2 hours of time that we have together, that they may aid us and bring their energy and their direction to us and help in their subtle ways guide us. And the light and the thought form, the elementals that each one has passed through and has walked and has guided them on their journey. We call those elementals and we create them ourselves and attract the universal elemental of this journey to each of us in this space. And anything negative trying to penetrate through that orb of light will be filled with love and filled with beautiful light and sent to divine will to find its God's will in itself. So bring your focus back to your breathing. Feel your bodies vibrating. Feel the energy in the room. A shift in that energy as we come together in sincerity and with our hearts yearning to open. And the realization itself. joining me on that journey with Bhagashri. I set the sarangi on my lap on this scarf, and I cover it every time, and I carry it, transported with it, wrapped in the scarf. And I don't know if you know, anyone in the room knows Kamaniya from Premahara, a kirtan group that plays worldwide. And whenever we're in the same region or area, we usually play together. And Kamaniya knew that I had a covering that I wasn't very happy with, and she gave me this. And on it, I don't know if you know, the mala beads that are out there have 108 beads in the circle that are for reciting mantra, and many rosaries are similar, different amount of beads that you say the mantra and then you move to the next bead. In fact, there are even mantra bags out there. Some people don't actually carry the beads showing. They wear the bag, have the beads in their hand in the bag, and we have 2 of those in there. But Kamaniya gave me this to cover the sarangi and to play with it in my lap. And it has on it the Maha-Mantra of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's basically saluting and celebrating to God. And it's got it written in Sanskrit, in the original Sanskrit. Each one of these squares has it, and there are 108 squares of this on here, so it brings another level of holiness and sacredness to this instrument. So my wife gave me a piece of paper with a few subjects that I should talk about. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, Sabrina is my wife, Sabrina Schleier. And she, and certainly Caitlin, and even Caitlin is over there, and Elizabeth from my office, were very instrumental in doing different things that put this together. More so than me, really. I mean, I just said, we're going to do this, and, do it. But I'm going to have to work on the sarangi because Rag Bhagashri is going to take a lot for me to do. So I think I'm going to start talking today about how I ended up with this instrument. For those of you that don't know me or don't know me well, I'm a violinist, and I also am a landscape designer of sustainable sacred spaces. And I enjoy doing both a lot. In fact, I don't want to just do one. I like doing all of that. I like creativity in many ways, and I like the sacredness of space and the sacredness of creating space, whether it's in a garden or in a room or just in the heart of another person that I may have the opportunity to touch with a few words or a few notes coming from my violin and now sarangi. So I was playing with a lot of kirtan artists, doing a lot of sacred music, and I noticed that there was a lot of Indian influence in some of the groups. I mean, some it's very Western, very Americanized, and others it was very Indian, and some of them were very classical Indian, and I understood that while I could hear what they were doing, I played it like I was stepping off a boat at Ellis Island from Russia and trying to speak English for the first time. And I knew that even though I could somewhat entertain the musical language of keys and things like that, I had no idea what was really going on. So I started talking to a few people, and they said, listen to as much as you can, gave me a few recommendations. And I had been thinking about taking on an instrument, another bowed instrument that was Indian, and I was looking at the Esraj, mainly because I heard that sarangi you don't play with your fingertips with your left hand. You play with the area of the fleshy part of the finger just above the cuticle. If you look at my fingers up close, you'll see what I'm talking about. So you don't play against the string here, you play against it there. And part of the sound comes from that. And I'll explain a little bit about the instrument in a few minutes, but I just said, that's going to hurt. That's good. If I thought developing calluses on fingertips hurt when I was a young guitar player at 12 years old in '64, guess I just told you how old I am. But not that I care. But it really just didn't sound appealing to me. So I looked at the S-Raj, and the S-Raj has frets like a sitar, and it's got sympathetic strings, and it's got a bow, and you play it, and you don't really press into them, and you play with your fingertips. And I love the sound of the S-Raj, but I bought a CD to help me train my ear from Ramesh Mishra. And he played a piece called Rag Jog, a raga, Rag Jog, and it very interesting, and I didn't really understand what he was doing in it, in terms of why he'd have a major third sometimes and a minor third, and for you musicians in the group, you know what I'm talking about. And it's the difference in what would change a key if we're talking about Western keys from major to minor. So for everyone can hear that. And there were a lot of things going on, and I fell in love with this piece and fell in love with the instrument and started listening to it so much I must have driven Sabrina crazy. I would even sleep in the other room with earbuds in and play it over and over while I slept at night. And I decided I'm going to take on this instrument, and managed to end up in India with one of the finest sarangi masters, Guruji from Varanasi, probably the most respected musician in Varanasi. And it was just a fluke of so-called circumstances, if anyone believes in circumstances, that I ended up with him, because my original plans fell through the day before I left for Varanasi. And I ended up with this caliber teacher. The sarangi represents to me, and the journey to India to really take it on, a lot about my spiritual journey. A lot of the things that I've had to struggle with in my life, the things in music, and sometimes we have a birthday book, and sometimes when a few people are over for dinner and we feel like having a good laugh, we pull out the birthday book, and I never read my date. Sabrina reads my date and reads that it says practice, 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 and she always laughs and everybody laughs, and I don't see what's funny about it, because that's just, as a musician, that's the only way I know to do it. You don't really get there by not doing that. So I went to India this trip, well, a year ago, in April and May of 2014, to begin the sarangi, to get a good sarangi that I would be happy to play, and to learn a little bit about it. And I received so much from the city. For those, are most of you familiar with Varanasi, India, with what Varanasi is? Varanasi is the holy city of Lord Shiva. To bring that into a Western perspective, Lord Shiva is the same as the Holy Spirit. That big. In the Jewish faith of the Jewish mystics, the Shekinah would be the same part. And getting to Varanasi, I have to tell you, I was there in the big election in April and May. In May last year, not this year, last year, it approached 120 degrees pretty much every day the month of May. I mean, it was like an oven. I was usually back in my room starting to practice by 8 in the morning. If I was there at 9, I was late getting back. So the thing that I noticed, and you know, I know everyone in the room has their own spiritual journey at whatever place they take it, in whatever way they're doing it. It's all valuable. And every experience that we get contributes to that work that we're doing. It's not like it's just about the things that we're doing spiritually. It's everything that's going on, every thought that's going on, every emotion that's going on. It's all part of our purification process and our returning back to who we are as ourselves, as our true self. You know, it's interesting in the Hindu faith, self as you, as the self, and self as God, as all capital selves, is the same. It's not really differentiated. And all of the great Indian masters, the great teachers, the great Gurujis, the great saints, really, of all the faiths, are really saying, when you look deeply, deeply into their teachings, they're saying the same thing. I practiced for many years Buddhism, and I love Buddhism, and I was in my late teens and early 20s, and I still to this day love it, and there's so much that I learned from it. And there's so many things from all of, and I grew up and was raised Jewish. I'm a bar mitzvah and the whole thing, and it's interesting how many people are going into Indian music and a lot of what goes on in Hindu philosophy and the whole principles of a lot of it that come from many of the Western religions. Sometimes we laugh about the Hindus like Krishna Das and Ram Das and many, many more, and I guess someone would consider me one. I don't really stick a label on it because I kind of consider, I was speaking at a place in Varanasi, and I'll get back to my original subject in just a moment, but I was speaking to a young Indian man who was probably close to 30, and he was a student at BSU, Banaras Hindu University, or BHU, Banaras Hindu University. It's very fine, one of the fine universities in India. My Guruji is a music teacher, music professor there, even though his lessons with me were private and away from the university, usually at his home and at the guest house that I was in. It was a music guest house that I was staying in. Wherever I was going, I lost that, so I'll go back to the world, I'll go back to where I was going with arriving in India. The thing that I noticed the most was that in Varanasi, now I remember the young man in Om Cafe. Okay, so we're getting into this long conversation about spirituality and about different religions and all of these different things, and he said, so what religion do you align yourself with? Are you Hindu? Are you Jewish? Are you Christian? And I said, at this point in my life, I can't understand the question because I can't see a difference. When you start looking, and a great teacher that's still with me, even though he has left his material body, he left it in 1995, while I was visiting him and living in Cyprus, he was known as Daskalos. For the Greek people in the room, they know that simply means teacher. And it was simple with him because he sat on no pedestals and wouldn't let anyone sit at his feet, and was truly a great healer and a great mystic and a great, great teacher. And we start to look at the worlds of duality that we all live in. In fact, a picture of Daskalos is back on the altar, as well as a picture of Nimkaroli Baba, who is, they're both two people that I consider great teachers of mine that I have been fortunate enough to connect strongly with. So duality. Is everyone familiar with the concept of duality? The world of opposites, light and dark, up and down, extremes in both ends, and the pendulum can swing, and the Hermetic principle is really taking the pendulum and finding the center point. Buddha talked about the central path. All of it seems to point to things like that. So this duality is really what we see as part of life here. The good, the bad, the light, the dark, the up, the down, all of it. The cold, the hot. All of it's part of life in not just the material world, but really what I would call the worlds of existence, our material world, our emotional world, our mental world. We can't really separate these things from the consciousness of how we live this life. We may relate ourselves to just this body, this physical body that we're functioning and moving in, but our emotions are never out of play in the experience that we have, nor is our mental body. And really it's considered three separate individual bodies that work together, and as one is discarded as what we would call the death of the material body, it's not the death of the person. It's just the material form is discarded, and that person continues in their, what we call the psychonoetical body, the emotional and mental bodies, continues. And that's a different subject. Back to duality. When I got to Varanasi, the extreme of chaos, extreme beyond anything. I was in India in '96 for a couple of months, and I spent a fair amount of time in Delhi, even though I hadn't planned on spending the night in Delhi. I spent a lot of time there because I managed to connect by another flute with a Swami that the connection was so strong that I ended up staying there for several weeks and just meditating and talking, and he founded a school there. So I had never seen this kind of chaos and craziness everywhere around me as it was in Varanasi in April of 2014. And it was wild, and it was almost disarming. I mean, it's enough to make someone feel that that's all there is there, and never look beyond it. But I knew that there was no mistake, that this was the city of Shiva, and that somehow all I had to do was open my eyes and I would be able to see it. And so what you have in Varanasi is the extreme duality of the wildest, most bizarre chaos and craziness to the deepest level of spirituality that I've ever experienced in a physical place on this planet. And it is underriding and overriding and permeating through everything. And as I stayed there, I began to notice that even what I was perceiving as this craziness and this chaos, it was even prevailing through all of that. It was moving through all of that, and there was, as crazy as it seemed to me, an order to the chaos. Traffic is an interesting thing to observe from a spiritual point of view in Varanasi. In fact, most of India, you can have that experience just about anywhere, but you'll find motorcycles and mopeds and rickshaws, which are bicycle driven, that you hire someone and he drives you on a seat. You may have seen photos of some. I know Sabrina's going to put up some pictures of a couple hundred photos from India and Varanasi, and there I think are a few rickshaws on there. And auto rickshaws, which are motorized, and taxis and automobiles and bicycles and cows and goats and dogs and people, and everywhere they're going. And even if there's a median dividing the two directions, that doesn't mean if someone needs to drop someone or go to a door that's on the other side of the street, they just cut across and around the median and just drive the wrong way down the street. And it's like water giving. You see, Sabrina and I went to Egypt, and we noticed that the Egyptians gave on the road. They gave. Americans are very dominating on the road. It's like, this is my lane. You have no right to encroach in my space. It's my land. And I mean, there are a lot of crazy drivers in this country that drive that way, and that if someone needs to peek through, they don't give a little bit, even if they've got the room, at least not without laying on the horn and swerving and yelling out the window, or like my mother used to do, she'd have the window closed and she would yell at someone through the closed window. When her window was open, she never said a word, not a peep, but with the window closed, she had quite a mouth there. So the craziness and the chaos had an order to it that was strange to me. And I really wasn't sure what that was all about, because I just figured it was part of this duality that I had to muddle through to find the other. But it wasn't so. I ended up in this trip, which for those of you that don't know, I went in January for 3.5 months and came back the end of April. And it was a profound time. I mean, my experience there was not like I was out on vacation and going sightseeing and going to all of the temples and going to all of the things that I would do. This instrument is quite a mistress. Well, actually, I should say my Guruji, Santosh Mishra, is quite a master. Because I got off the plane, I took the taxi, I got a call from him on the way in the taxi after traveling for 20-something hours, and figured we would start my lessons the next day. And he said, no, he said, we'll start at 5 o'clock today, be at my house. So I got back, dumped my things, grabbed the sarangi, and went to his house, not quite sure how to get there from where I was on this trip. So we had lessons every single day. And when I went to the Cleveland Institute of Music to study violin, performance violin, we would have a lesson once per week and practice all week to prepare for that lesson. The caliber teacher that Santoshji is no lesser, if anything, more than any teacher of music I have ever been with. And I had one day to prepare for each lesson, and it is not an option to walk into a teacher like this unprepared. It's just not. So my day was spent practicing the sarangi, practicing the exercises, and as we got into pieces. And in the course of the practicing and going out and getting a bite to eat and going out and doing something, so many experiences, even in practicing, began to unfold spiritually. I got wrapped up in myself about how I was working and what I was doing, and really wrapped up in it where I was getting a bit intense about it. And guess what happened to me immediately when that started happening? Mother India always takes care of you, I have to say. I got sick. Stopped me from doing everything. And I kept saying I have to practice. It's like, no, I can't practice. I couldn't even sit up, much less practice. And I was just stopped for 3 or 4 days. And the processing that happened when it was done shifted everything. And the importance wasn't at accomplishing anything. It was at simply doing the work the best I could do it. So it shifted from me trying to achieve anything, and those people that know me and that I talk about healing know that I always talk about healing, that we can do the healing work that we go out to do for other people. And everyone is a healer in some way, even if it's a few kind words to someone. You are giving this heart energy, of healing energy, to help another person in whatever may be going on. Sometimes that's not even obvious to us. But it's letting go of any outcome, of accomplishing anything, just doing the work and surrendering that and walking away from it. And that can be very hard when you're invested in, leaving my life and my business and my wife and my children and grandchildren and going off to a strange land that I find myself very at home in, and studying an instrument that I found way more challenging than I expected it to be. I expected it to come pretty fast with my work on the violin, and it was much more difficult than I had anticipated. Much more challenging. Classical Indian music is more challenging. People, think, well, what's the scale? And I could tell you the scale of Rag Bhagashri. It's similar to, actually, the scale, for those of you that know any modes, it's the Dorian mode, scale-wise. But the way it ascends is different than the way the notes descend. The rules that guide them, you never play a fifth. The 5 is like a main note in every key. It's the grounding note. You have your root, and then you have your 5th. And in the tempura settings here, there was no 5th. There usually is. I heard someone started chanting the 5th when we were oming, and it wasn't there, and it was nice to hear it. But I know this might be musical gibberish to some of you, but the point is that the rules are so complex, and to turn it into music, and a friend of mine, Steve Gorn, who is a wonderful, wonderful, world-renowned Bansuri flute player, said to me he spent 2 or 4 years in India studying classical Indian music on Bansuri, and he left and he spent a couple years away, and he worked on this one raga that he worked up himself, and he went back to India afterwards, and he played it for a lot of people that he knew in India. None of them recognized the raga because he didn't really understand the nuances of how it worked. So it's so subtle. I started listening to classical Indian music in 1965, I think it was, maybe 6, but it was 65. I was 13 years old, and I would go in my room and I would light a single white candle on the floor, turn out the light, and turn on Ravi Shankar, playing with a tabla and tambura, which was someone playing the 4-string, probably 2 4-stringed instruments, and I had 2 of them in my iPad going at once. So that's what you heard for the drum instruments that were going on there, the notes. And I would listen to that music, focusing just on the candle for 2 hours. It was interesting how many of the spiritual paths that I have pursued in my life, both with my teacher Daspalos and in the more Indian line, both have brought me back to how did I end up doing this at 13 years old out of the blue. Wow, we're getting some well-needed rain. Loud rain, I might add. Will you still be able to hear me, or do I need to speak a little closer to the mic? Or should I just wait a couple of minutes?
Why don't you play some music on this stuff?
Going down? No? Going backwards? Yeah, I think it's enough. So this experience at 13, I would come out in a little bit of a trance after meditating on the flame of a candle for 2 hours, listening to sitar music, some of the best in the world, which, I didn't have any way to judge that, but the Beatles had introduced me to him, and I took heart at that. I was a big Beatle fan. In fact, I started playing guitar a year before that as a result of the Beatles and what they were doing, and started the violin a few years later, violin and piano. I was a lead guitar player to begin in a teen bopper band that, at 14 and 15, we were traveling all over the place and negotiating in Nashville on a record deal that some other things happened politically within the band members, which happens usually when they're a little older than 14 and 15, but I guess the 14 and 15-year-olds aren't immune to all of that either. So, but I found that had a lot of significance to many things that were going on. Some of the pictures that you'll see on the PowerPoint presentation will show what's called in India arti. Does anyone in the room, I know you know what arti is, anyone else in the room know what arti is? It's prayers. It's doing your morning and evening prayers. And every morning at many of the ghats, the ghat, spelled G-H-A-T, is a set of holy steps, and that certain sacred ceremonies have taken place that caused them to be built, and that has that. And Varanasi is filled with amazing ghats. And every morning, most of them, at sunrise and evening at sunset, many of them have these ceremonies that are going on, and they all involve the elements and involve quite a show of fire. And some of the slides that we have are of some of the young priests holding, I'm not sure what you would call the pieces that they were holding, in a line as the sun was going down and it was starting to get dark with the fire blazing, and others had almost like a pyramid of a tree that fire was coming out of every level, and coming out, and over it was a statue of a serpent, of a cobra, which is considered a holy animal in many parts of the world. You know, it's interesting. You know, I mentioned elementals in the prayer and when we were really blessing the space today. The elementals are thought forms, thought and emotional forms, and everything that we think, everything that we feel, we're sending it out. It radiates out, you know, good or bad. And, you know, we're all doing our bit on purifying the thoughts and emotions, and sometimes we do well with it, and other times it gets the better of us. And that's part of our journey, is to learn how to sort that out and figure it out and clean it up. And day by day, we chip away a little more. So with elementals, everything you do and say and think sends out an energy. And it becomes like a form that a seer or a clairvoyant can actually see these. You know, you can go to an art museum and you can see pictures of someone giving like the evil eye, a really awful energy. And you can see some of the images might be snakes coming out of the person's mouth. In their culture of that artist, snakes were considered something evil. Other cultures, snakes are considered something holy and sacred. And you might see a green, gross, pukey stuff coming out, or you might see fire coming out, depending on really the way a person would see the elemental in terms of their relationship with this world is according to their culture. But the energy of the elemental is the same in those, in terms of what they were intending. It's the intention and the energy on how it goes out. So whatever we're sending out, benign, good, beautiful, healing, or ugly, or just losing our cool, or whatever it is, it does go out and it takes a form, and if we do it enough, it will attract other like elementals similar to it and draw them all back to us. You know, many of the religions talk about this in many subtle ways. It's mentioned in one of the parables of Christ. It's mentioned throughout so many things. Doskelos, every level of lesson with Doskelos, every level of teaching always came back to elementals. And some of the people that work in that with me know that every time we go into new areas, one of the early things we're talking about in that new area are elementals and how they affect us and how we really work and what we can do to purify not only what we're sending out, but purify what's coming to us. At the meditation last week, we did something called the main exercise. And at the very end, we create an orb of translucent light around ourselves, similar to what we did in the space here tonight, and create in that orb of light. And this is at the end of a 30-minute, 20 to 30-minute, pretty intense visualization exercise that is moving energy and affirmations through all of the sacred centers and doing all sorts of things. At the end, while you're standing there in this golden light and rosy light around the heart area and bluish sky blue light around and inside the abdomen area and white arms and legs and this radiance of white light in this orb. And what we create is an elemental that nothing can penetrate this orb of light to bring harm to our personality. Anything trying will be neutralized and dissolved and never allowed to return the negativity to the sender. And instead filled with love that will go back. And in this way we can help purify the world by not allowing that negativity to bounce off of us and go back to the sender. So it may seem small, but you start doing it on a daily basis and start seeing how this affects things in your life, and it becomes a very powerful part of, certainly it has been, of my spiritual practice. I don't need this quite so close now. Since the rain, it's interesting how as soon as I got to that part of that, the rain stopped for a moment. It got real quiet in here. Yeah, the elements sometimes work really well with us. Sometimes they give us many lessons. And sometimes they help make us understand lessons that may not be as obvious without some of their help. And there's a lot of that going on. Sabrina said that I should mention that at 3, my family used to all laugh, and my mother and father would all talk about that I had an imaginary friend. And I always insisted that it wasn't an imaginary friend, that it was an invisible helper, someone there helping me. And it was a very strange name that I gave this friend that they called imaginary. Ma-Akasha. And for anyone, at 37 years old, I realized that Akasha is the etheric vitality, the prana, the chi. And Ma, master, the mother, like, of that. Of really, even in the symbol of life in the Kabbalah, whether it's Jewish, Christian, ancient Egyptian, whatever lineage it follows, the line of the Holy Spirit is on the female line. Mother Earth draws into itself, into herself. You know, I don't view God in the absolute, and if that term offends anyone, I apologize, substitute it for any term that does not offend you. I use the word God, I use the word absolute beingness. But I find that all of the gods, that all of the archangels of the elements and the different archangels of the Western religions and the Western spiritual teachings, that all of the Hindu gods are all aspects of God. There's nothing that I've seen or spoken to with anyone in India that has differed really from that in terms of. So when you see the deities of, I pulled one out of Sarasvati. There is a very small statue of Sarasvati over on the altar, a little small stone one that I brought back, that I picked up in Varanasi, that I love so much. Sarasvati is the goddess of the arts, of art and music, of the expression of creativity. And, you know, there are many people here for sure that are actively pursuing types of healing, learning skills in healing, learning how to use them, doing a lot of that. And that creative process is all part of it. So Sarasvati really resonates, but Sarasvati is that creative aspect of God, which really falls under, you know, in the Western side, the Holy Spirit, the whole creative ether, as I would put it, the creative part of the etheric. Well, I think it's time to move in a new direction on the talk. So Ma-Akasha turned out to be someone that resonated very strongly for me, which was an archangel that I was working with at that time that I had no idea that related to when I was a young child. And that was the Archangel Raphael, which is the Lord of the etheric. When I'm building up my etheric vitality and my energy to do healing work, to project it, whether I'm with someone or at a distance. And it doesn't really matter whether someone's a foot away or whether they're 5,000 miles away. In the ethereal realms, it's the same. There's no difference. Our conception of space makes it different. The actual passing of energy is no different. It's no different whether someone is in their physical body or whether they're not in their physical body if we strongly communicate to them. And let me give this as a little bit of a not warning. Someone said a word that might fit, but as a little bit of a pretext. I discourage people from trying to communicate with the loved ones that have departed their physical body, because they have work to do there. They have work to continue. Some don't even know that they've actually passed over, because the changes are very similar to when you're in the dream state, and you can be oriented very similarly to the dream state. And it's not always obvious that you no longer have a physical body, because in your dream, if you ever become lucid, and has anyone in the room ever had a lucid dream where you are awake and you know you're dreaming? You can walk up to a wall, the elements in that world are the same elements that are in this world. The difference is the juxtaposition of those elements, and the dominant element in this world is no longer dominant in that world. So in that world, you can walk up to a wall and you can feel it's solid. You can touch the wall, you can bang on the wall. You can say, oh my gosh, this room has no doors or windows in that wall. If you ever have this happen in a dream, you can create a window by your thought. You can create a door by your thought. You can create that you're somewhere else by your thought, or you can just actually feel the wall, hit it, and then walk right through it. Now, it's not so easy to develop that skill in the material world if you don't want to break a few bones or things. And there are a few that can do things like that, and they've learned how to raise their vibrations to a level that they actually, it doesn't have the density and they can move through. You don't hear of many people, but you hear of a few that have been able to do things like that in India, throughout the world, and many, many great saints could do certain things like that. And it's not really about trying to learn how to develop powers. It's really about how to become true to who we really are. I know that I've studied and meditated a huge amount in my life, and even when I'm practicing, even when I'm designing, it's all still going on and still pouring into it. So it's not like it's a casual Sunday thing or a once in a while thing that I think about these things. But what I really understand is that our true self, our soul self-beingness, the innermost self that is expressing itself through your physical body, your emotional body, and your mental body, which are like garments of clothing over an array of this, like the personality that becomes you, that the true innermost self needs to learn and develop nothing. It is absolute. It is the complete self. Now, we come into this world and we sort of lose a lot of that. We actually are like the angel thrust out of heaven, and all of a sudden things go on and we're in this world of craziness and the chaos part of Varanasi, and it influences us and we forget who we are. Very much similar, the process is very similar to the parable of the prodigal son, for those of you that either are or have grown up in the Christian faith. It's a beautiful story, and it's about the beingness leaving, the absoluteness leaving, projecting a ray of itself into the worlds of duality, to go through the cycles of incarnation, to remember who it is, and begin to work to return to who we already are. See, we're already self-realized in our true self. The problem is that there is a disconnect between the small I as what we see of ourselves in this world, and the true innermost being that is our true self. And anyone at any time can actually have a realization that will bring them into that, and they will know who themselves. There are many people that have done tremendous work and had a moment, or even an hour, or a week, or a few weeks of that experience, and then they say that they lost it. It was like a taste of their divinity, and gives us a reason and a motivation, and who knows what the absolute reason for giving these blessings to someone. We aren't really around to question it, but they're there to aid us and encourage us in what can be for many of us a big struggle. You know, I see a lot of people in my life, and I'm fortunate I do have a lot of recharge time myself. I have a lot of time that I take care of my inner needs, and if I let that go for a few days, I get cranky. It really doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for the people around me, for sure. Ask my wife, she can verify that one for absolute, and she'll sometimes say, go practice, or go sit by yourself. And even though I'm not always open to that suggestion, it's always good advice. In those moments, I see a lot of pain in the eyes of people that I see. You know, we look in the consciousness of a person, and we can often see it through the energy that their bodies radiate. We can see it in their eyes especially. We can see it in the way their heart radiates on things. It's not in what they do and what someone has and what they've accomplished. And it doesn't matter whether someone's accomplished a lot or accomplished little. What does matter is their presence and how they've touched other hearts. And I think that we live in a society, especially in the West, where we're taught that we certainly have to put the smiley face forward. And I see so many big smiles with eyes in agony that look back at me. And I do healing work with them, and I try to say a kind word, as long as I'm not caught up in my stuff. If I see that, I do something. And it's not always on the physical world. It's not always like grabbing someone and hugging them, even though sometimes that's what's needed. I think that part of our society in the West has made doing, and I use the word doing very explicitly, much more important than the idea of being. And you know, you look and you'll see some photos of sadhus in India when Sabrina puts on the photos. And sadhus are, when they're true sadhus, they're really holy people. They've given up all possessions. They have nothing. They actually, most of them won't even ask for any money or food. I don't ever have any trouble giving money or food to one of them, because they're holy people that are designating their life towards God. And they're designating it towards being. In this country, that would be considered a homeless bum. And sometimes the homeless people are people that have had unfortunate things, circumstances go on. Listen, things can change so fast in our lives here. You know, in the last 4 years, so much has changed economically that so many people that had things, you know, many people are doing things different now than what they were doing 5 and 6, 7 years ago. And as they're untangling their way through what's going to work, realizing that some things are not working, realizing their financial abilities, all of a sudden some of them started getting more and more limited, and something else had to unfold, something else had to happen, starting to realize our happiness is not based on what we have or what we do. It's not based on what we wear or the car that we drive or the bicycle that we ride. It's not based on a piece of sound equipment or an instrument to learn how to play or any of that. It's based on us internally being at peace with ourselves and walking through every moment of life in gratitude for the breath that brings this moment to us. Gratitude is such a huge part of life, and for me to see so many people of extreme poorness with a gratitude for life, and I'm not saying that everyone did, because that chaos reaches that level in the society there too, and it's a very sad and very difficult thing to see. But I guess really what we're talking about here, to bring it all around in a circle, is what can we do in our lives to live a full life that we are really at peace with ourselves. In 1989, I went to visit a teacher in Cyprus, in Strovolo, Cyprus, for the first time. I had met him through meditation and instantly connected with him. Immediately started learning so many things through meditation and through telepathy and through my sleep and my dreams. I would find myself out of my dream state learning things and coming back not remembering anything from what I had dreamt, but knowing how to do certain things with healing that I didn't even know what they were before that night's sleep. And I think I talked about that last week at the meditation before, well, no, it was at the school before we did the balls of light at Akron U at that meditation there. So how do we find gratitude in our lives when we're struggling? You know, we can make the drama of struggle the domineering part of our lives. We can. Everybody can find something that's there, that's legitimate, that's there, that's part of the struggle. Everyone. No one is immune. Some are more extreme, some are less extreme, but the seriousness of how that affects every single individual is serious to that individual, and I don't make light of it with anyone. But we also can look for a different way of experiencing our lives that lets us off the hook for the struggle, even though we acknowledge and honor that the struggle is there. We don't have to be struggling in it every moment. We can surrender that. You know, that whole idea of surrender, and you'll be free. Surrender, true surrender. You know, that's a tough one to bite off when you're really, really chewing on something that is not letting go and got the grips around your neck. And yet, when it comes down to it, the only healing out of it is to surrender it, because we can't change it. We can't solve it. And whatever your spiritual beliefs are, to surrender it to that, whatever it may be. And find the preciousness in the moments that we have here. Ram Dass went in I think the late 60s to India, to Kenchi, and he came back and wrote a book, Be Here Now. Has anybody seen or read the book or heard of the book or heard of Ram Dass? It's a really nice book. It's a nice read, really a pleasant thing. And he talks about being present and being here now, and he talks about his experience of being Karoli Baba, and his photo is on the altar, which I keep in my violin case all the time. I often keep it up here because when I get too twisted up in my head, I'll look over at the photo and, I know, I'm well aware the photo doesn't physically change its form, but the energy, he shifts on. He'll shift, and sometimes if I get too caught up in my head, he'll smirk at me. Give me like this energy of smirking, like to remind me of what it is I'm doing, and like, whoa, I'm getting all caught up in something, and it's enough for me just to release it and let it go. So I hope that each person can find whatever that is that can help them let go and find the gratitude in the moments that we have. A couple things I do want to mention, and I haven't looked at my list to see if I've covered things, and I don't really know if I'm out of time. I'm still pretty good, so I want to do a little bit of a meditation before we close. There were two things that happened. One relates to a post that I put on my Facebook wall today of a young, poor Indian man selling coconuts. I think you saw that, didn't you, Dave? Yeah. And a rich individual coming by, and he said he wanted 30 rupees, and the guy told him he was robbing him, and blah, 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 and walked away. And he said, you're rich and I'm poor, I'm trying to feed my family. 30 rupees is a reasonable price. 30 rupees, by the way, is 50 cents, just so you know. He comes back with a soft drink in his hand of some kind. I don't remember what it was. Remember what the soft drink was? Something, Coke or something. And the guy's, and he walks by, and this young man says to him, oh, what is that? How much did you spend for that? He said 35 rupees. He said, you won't give an honest poor man 30 rupees for a whole healthy coconut, but you'll pay that. He said, it's branded. He said, so you'll pay the rich without questioning it, whatever they ask, whatever high price, but the poor man you'll beat down. He wanted to take it for 15 rupees, which was a quarter, the whole coconut. And granted, money, the relationship of money is different there than it is here. There's no question it is. But he said to him some words, and I can't remember the words. They're beautiful, so I invite you to go take a peek and play the video and share it on your own walls or whatever. But it was beautifully said. And the reason that I wanted to say this was, I got to India in 2014 to study sarangi. And I have white skin. I'm a Westerner. And I was a target for every kind of ripoff that there was. Instead of 30 rupees, they would ask 300 rupees. And it was pretty commonplace. So I started asking a few of my friends and my Guruji and a few different people, what things should cost and what they pay and what would be realistic, because, even though I'm certainly not wealthy by some of their standards, we're the poorest of us are pretty well off in this room compared to many of the people there. Many of the people. So I would find out that going from the hotel in 2014 to the main ghat, which I made that trip often because I didn't know that I had the ability for a hotspot in my Indian phone, so I was traveling to a hotel to eat in a restaurant to use their Wi-Fi every morning at like 7 o'clock in the morning before it got too hot. And I knew that 20 rupees was the right price. The Indians would pay 15 and I was okay paying 20. And one day I'm coming back late and it's at least 115 degrees, and I negotiated with the guy at the 20 rupees, and he wanted 50, and he wanted 30, and I just 20. And halfway down there, he's saying, it's so hot, and he puts the thing in over. I'd like to thank everyone for coming and spending some time with me. I was looking forward to this. I was pushed a little bit by Sabrina and Caitlin, I think, was part of that pushing to present a few things. I'm a little shy. I'm not so shy musically. I'm shy talking publicly, even though I do more privately about my journey. And I hope that you carry whatever it is that you need, and whatever doesn't resonate, you leave it. But hopefully you'll take at least one thing home with you that will carry into your life and bring something that will bring you richness and depth and bring that holy state even more dominant in your presence. So I'd like to end with a silent meditation, and I'll end the last part of the meditation. Well, I'll play the last half of it with the sarangi. So keep meditating then. So I won't be saying anything except I'll start out with breathing, and then that'll signify for you to slowly start being aware of your toes and your fingers, and no hurry to get up, just that's when it's formally closed. Breathe the precious etheric, the prana, the chi. Draw it into your body through your breath. And with breathing in for 4 beats of your heart, and breathing out to 4 beats of your heart, feel yourself getting calmer and calmer. Feel any tension in your body just falling away. Feel your body completely relaxed. If there's any place in your body that's not relaxed, just send some light there and just go into full relaxation in that place. So breathe in to 4 beats of your heart. Breathe out to 4 beats of your heart. And make a quiet effort to still your thoughts. But if they return, and they probably will, don't fight them. Just gently send them away. Don't fight them. And go back to focusing on your breath. Your breath is the fire of life in this body. Now continue to relax and go into a slow, silent meditation. thank everyone for coming. The potluck, the food out there is blessed from our presence and the work that we did and the energy that we shared together. So enjoy it and really think of the prasad, the blessed food, the mana as we eat. So enjoy and take a look at the things that came back from India. They're many beads, but they're rudraksha, both immature seeds as well as mature ones. They all need to be soaked in coconut oil. The mature ones, and the smaller they get, the more pricey they get, but the mature ones are not dyed or anything. They have nothing, so if you look at what I have around my neck, they're the exact same beads. I got them in the old section of Kashi. Spent quite a while with the man who, there was only one person I would buy them from in Varanasi while I was there. And it was him, and the artist that did the paintings was really beautiful. And we'll take a look at them, they're smashing, and the bags and things like that. There are like 3 bags in there, ladies' bags from Om Cafe, which was a place that I used to go to a lot, and they were made, what's it called? They were made fair trade by some women on this farm, and they were very proud that the things that they sold there, while they were a little pricier than some of the other things you could buy, the quality was good, and these women were being paid for real. Instead of being paid a couple of rupees, they were being paid decently. So I couldn't hear you. Oh, and hope to see some of you at Bhakti Fest. Johnny Uttal is playing on Friday night, if anyone knows Johnny Uttal, and I'll be joining him at Cleveland State, up in the ballroom and the student centers, and I guess there's a benefit for Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's group. What's it called? Art of Living Foundation, thank you. Elizabeth knows because she's the one who puts the flyers and things together. And then there's Bhakti Fest in Madison, which may be the last one in Madison. So hopefully, lots of friends will be able to come and enjoy it. We just have a great time. And 2 days later, at the end of Bhakti Fest, that Tuesday morning, Amma will be in Chicago, right on the way back. So last year, we ended up playing somewhere in Chicago on Monday night, and came back and decided we're not going to just rush to drive back, and we're going to be tired and we're just going to go to sleep. We're not going to go to work. It's a 9-hour drive, 8-hour drive. So we spent most of the day with Amma. We did darshan, and we couldn't believe how many people that we knew and loved we kept bumping into there. It was just wonderful. So anyway, that's my life. Hopefully some of you will enjoy some of that if anything interests you, and go enjoy the food and whatever. Thank you, Carolyn, for helping us with.
Thank you.
Thank you.